Back in June of 2014, there was this guy, a young German fellow named David Johnson, who went to Varna, Bulgaria with a group of friends. They were just there to relax at the beach, enjoy some cheap drinks and soak up the nightlife. From what I understand about David, he was a pretty laid-back, quiet guy, not someone who'd get into fights or stir up trouble. But one night, while they were out at a bar, suddenly he supposedly got into a heated argument with some local dudes, maybe over a football rivalry or something similar. That altercation ended badly for him. He ended up with a ruptured eardrum, which meant he couldn't hop on the plane with his friends anymore. The doctor told him he needed to stay in Bulgaria until it healed. His friends offered to stay and keep him company, but David insisted they should just go back to Germany without him. He said he'd be fine, just needed a little time to rest up. So he checked into a cheap hotel near the airport, all alone. And what happened over the next few days is one of Europe's most perplexing disappearances. David started acting really strangely. He kept making frantic calls to his mom, sounding genuinely panicked. He told her to cancel his credit cards and kept saying that people were following him around. At one point, late at night, he left the hotel claiming he was being watched by 4 mysterious men. He even texted his mother asking about the side effects of an antibiotic he'd been prescribed. His behavior grew more erratic. Staff at the hotel described him as nervous, pacing around and constantly checking the windows like he was afraid. Then, on July 8th, the day he was supposed to fly back home, David arrived at Varna Airport and things took a strange turn. Surveillance footage shows him walking into the terminal initially calm. But in just a few minutes, he looks agitated talking to a worker, then suddenly backing away, kind of nervously. Without warning, he takes off sprinting through the terminal, rushing out the automatic doors, and then bolting across the parking lot. He leaves his luggage, passport, everything behind, just runs off in a trance. The last footage we have shows him disappearing into the woods near a construction site. Nobody has seen him since that day. And what's even more chilling is all the theories swirling around his case. Some folks think he might have had a psycho episode, maybe triggered by the antibiotics or stress, or suffered some undiagnosed mental breakdown. Others believe something more sinister was happening, that he was being followed or targeted, and whatever he encountered last was so terrifying it made him run barefoot into the wilderness, defenseless. There were supposed sightings in Eastern Europe over the following years, but none could ever be confirmed. His mom firmly believes he wasn't mentally ill. She thinks he was in danger, possibly stumbled onto something dark or dangerous, or got involved in something he didn't fully understand. The image of him, wide-eyed and running in terror, has been viewed millions of times online. Still, no one knows exactly what scared him so bad or where he vanished to. Switching gears entirely, let me tell you about something that happened in 1912 in a tiny town called Bellyhurst, Louisiana. A 4-year-old boy named Samuel Anderson vanished during a fishing trip with his family near Seway Lake. His parents claimed he disappeared sometime during the day, probably while wandering near the water. They organized a huge search right away. Hundreds of volunteers combed the area, dragged the lake, searched the woods, even set off dynamite underwater, hoping to find his body if he was stuck in the lake bed. But Samuel was just gone. The town was devastated. For 8 months, everyone was obsessed with finding him. Then, early in 1913, a boy matching Samuel's description was found traveling with a man named George Walker in Mississippi. Walker said the boy was his nephew, Bruce, and that Julia Anderson, the boy's real mother, had entrusted him to care for her son. But Samuel's parents and many locals were convinced the boy was their Samuel. Walker was arrested on kidnapping charges. Authorities arranged a reunion between the boy and Samuel's mother. At first, she was hesitant. Witnesses later said she seemed unsure if this boy really was her son. But after spending a few days with him, Julia confidently declared that this was indeed Samuel. Case closed, right? The newspapers announced the boy had been found, Walker was sentenced, and Samuel was taken back home to live with his family. But then things got strange. Julia Anderson suddenly reappeared, insisting the boy wasn't Samuel but her son, Bruce. She claimed the Dunnars had taken him. She was broke, had no lawyer and no support. The courts sided with the Dunnar family, and she was denied custody. Forever she returned to Mississippi heartbroken, branded a liar and unfit mother. For decades, the boy grew up under the name Samuel Anderson, unaware of his true origins. In the early 2000s, Samuel's grandson started digging into the family history, sensing something was off. Eventually, they agreed to a DNA test comparing Samuel's descendants to the Dunnars. The results tore apart a century of assumptions. The boy was not biologically related to the Dunnars at all. He was actually Bruce Anderson. Julia had been right all along. The real Samuel Dunnar had vanished without a trace. To this day, nobody knows what really happened to him. Did he drown? Was he kidnapped? Or did something else happen? His case remains officially unsolved. Meanwhile, an innocent boy was raised as Samuel Dunnar, and another family believed they'd lost their son forever, all because the truth was too painful to face, and the need to find closure overrode the facts. Let me take you across the country to Los Angeles in 1928. Christine Miller had a little boy named William, and one day, he just disappeared from their house. She'd given him a few coins to go see a movie while she was at work, but William never came back. She reported him missing, and the police started searching immediately. His case made big headlines, especially since it was a time when fears about child abductions were growing. The city's pressure on the Lapt was intense. Christine kept searching for 5 months, handing out flyers, organizing neighborhood hunts, and giving interviews. Then in August, police in Illinois picked up a boy claiming to be William. They brought him back to LA for the reunion, with reporters in tow, thinking they'd cracked the case. But when Christine saw the boy, she told them, "That's not my William." The police brushed it off, saying the boy had probably been traumatized and changed somehow. They urged her to take him home on a trial basis. Reluctantly, she did, but just 3 weeks later, she came back and told the cops, "This is not my son." This time, the police declared she was hysterical and, shockingly, committed her to a mental hospital, claiming she refused to accept reality. Meanwhile, the boy admitted he wasn't William. His real name was Arthur Rhodes, a runaway who'd been pretending to be William to get a free trip to California. He'd hoped it'd help him meet his favorite movie stars. So, imagine that: a grieving mother reunited with a stranger's child, then was locked away when she refused to go along with the lie. That was just the beginning of a darker part of the story. Around that same time, a man from Canada, Gordon Northcott, was arrested for a string of murders down in California. He ran a chicken farm and had lured boys there, imprisoning and killing them. When authorities raided his farm, they found evidence linking him to several victims, one of whom might have been William. Christine pleaded for answers about William, but Northcott never confessed. He was convicted of unrelated murders, but what happened to William remained a mystery. Christine spent her life trying to find her son, never giving up, and Los Angeles never properly apologized for how they treated her, for locking her away because she refused to accept what they told her was the truth. This story later inspired the film Changeling with Angelina Jolie. But the real horror lies in how it actually played out: a mother betrayed, a child exploited, and a police force more interested in headlines than truth. Jump forward to 2008 and you get Kayla Reed. She was just 24, living in a small town in British Columbia, trying to start fresh after a breakup. One evening, she told her mom she was heading out to meet a friend at a coffee shop nearby. She left around 7:30 p.m., wearing a hoodie and jeans, carrying her phone but no purse. And she just vanished. Her phone went dead within an hour. Her family and neighbors launched a huge search. Flyers went up. Volunteers combed the woods. No signs of foul play, no evidence of a struggle, no wrecked phone, torn clothes, or surveillance footage. It was like she disappeared into thin air. Her parents were devastated. Kayla was responsible, grounded, the last person who'd run off without telling someone. Weeks turned into months, and then the case went cold. But then, a year later, she reappeared. In the early hours of July 5, 2009, she walked into a hospital almost 200 meters from where she disappeared. She was disoriented, dehydrated, barefoot and incredibly thin, sunburned, dressed in clothes that looked unfamiliar. She refused to talk to doctors but wrote her name on a piece of paper. The hospital confirmed her identity. She'd been missing for 11 months. Her parents rushed to see her, but she barely responded. She just looked at them blankly, sometimes smiled, never hugged them. When they asked where she had been, she said only, "I was in the dark. I was safe, but it wasn't me." Doctors found no signs of injuries, no trauma, no drugs in her system. Toxicology results came back clean. She showed no signs of abuse or long-term drugging. She didn't have any tattoos or branding. She spent a week under psychiatric observation, then was quietly sent home. No charges, no explanations. Kayla never talked about where she'd been. She deleted social media, moved away, and refused interviews. Her case was officially closed. A missing girl who came back but with no answers. She was changed, not physically hurt but somehow different. One nurse remembered that right before Kayla was discharged, she looked her in the eyes and whispered, "Don't go into the woods alone. They find you there." No one knew what she meant and nobody ever forgot it. And finally, there's the story of Connor Hastings, a 15-year-old high schooler from Santa Rosa, California. He took his usual route home from school, surrounded by houses and parks. But one day, he simply didn't arrive. His mom called him, no answer. Her friends hadn't seen him since he left school that day. By evening, police were involved. The next day, they found his backpack dumped behind a dumpster but no sign of him, and his phone was missing. The search stretched on for weeks. Police dogs tracked a scent trail that abruptly ended at the edge of a wooded trail. No tire tracks, no witnesses. Rumors spread that Connor had been acting paranoid in the days before he vanished, asking about a man in a red jacket, jumping at noises, thinking he was being watched. Then, 5 months later, in March of 2018, he reappeared. Or rather, he was found. A call came in to a pay phone, one of the last still working in the area, reporting a teenage boy sitting totally unresponsive on a bench outside a small library. When police arrived, Connor was silent, staring forward. His hair had grown out, clothes filthy, clutching an empty spiral notebook completely blank. He wouldn't speak for over a day. When his parents finally reached him, he hugged his mom tightly and started crying. But he wouldn't reveal much about where he'd been, just that he'd been taken. He said they kept him somewhere cold, without clocks, and that he'd escaped by passing their test. His final statement a month later was chilling. "There were others. I heard them. I wasn't alone. But I might be the only one they returned." The notebook he held was blank, except for 4 words scribbled in shaky handwriting on the last page. "I was not alone." Authorities never found any suspects. The FBI reviewed the case but released no conclusions. Connor changed schools, adopted a new name, and tried to live a normal life. But everyone agrees the case is technically closed because he returned. Still, nobody really believes it's that simple. And then there's Maura Murray. On February 9, 2004, she was just 21, a nursing student. She disappeared after a minor car accident on a remote stretch of Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. Nearly 20 years later, nobody knows where she went, what she was running from, or who might have been waiting for her. Earlier that day, Maura had left her dorm after claiming a family member had died a lie, since no one in her family had died. She packed a bag, withdrew almost all her money, bought alcohol, and headed north into the White Mountains alone, with no real destination. At around 7:27 p.m., a local woman called 911, reporting that a small black Saturn had crashed into a snowbank on a sharp curve nearby. When police arrived 20 minutes later, the car was their headlights off, stuffed with spilled wine and with airbags deployed. But Maura was gone. A nearby bus driver had seen her just minutes before, talking to her through her car window, looking cold and shaken but refusing help. When police came, they found the scene undisturbed: no footprints, no blood, no signs of a struggle. Her phone and credit cards never saw any activity again. The alcohol bottles she bought were partly gone, partly untouched. Nothing indicated foul play, yet nothing made sense. Maura had no history of mental illness or anything that suggested she would leave everything behind. Her friends and family said she was planning her future, but she was just gone. Her case became a global obsession online. People analyzed every detail, offering theories. Some thought she staged her disappearance to start anew. Others suspected she was abducted or met someone she knew. But darker ideas floated too, like she'd been taken by a serial predator operating the mountains or involved in some larger cover-up. Whatever the truth, her body was never recovered. And finally, Nome, Alaska. That tiny, remote town buried under miles of snow and ice, mostly reachable only by plane. The winters there are harsh, long, brutal, endless night. But even in that cold, desolate place, the story of Rick Hills is one that locals still whisper about. Rick was 37, an electrician by trade. Quiet, hardworking, not much of a social guy, but well-liked by everyone who knew him. He lived alone in a small cabin on the edge of town, deep in the wilderness. It wasn't unusual; many folks preferred that isolated life. But Rick's disappearance was different. Turns out, he wasn't the first person to vanish from that area. Over 10 years, more than 20 people had gone missing under eerily similar circumstances. The authorities suspected a pattern and the FBI looked into it, but Rick's case stood out: more personal, more terrifying. In November of 2004, Rick didn't show up for work. His boss kept calling him, no answer. That evening, a coworker drove out to his cabin. The truck was there, lights off. It had snowed lightly earlier, but as they approached, they saw something strange: no footprints in or out, no signs of recent activity. It was like Rick had never left or come back. They knocked, no response. When the coworker peeked inside, the house looked untouched. The coffee pot was still full, his phone was on the table, and the bed was made perfectly, but no sign of Rick. They searched the surrounding property, then the woods for days with dogs, drones, helicopters, and found nothing. No blood, no trail, no clues. His clothes were gone: no coat, no boots, no keys, just empty. He had no enemies. His bank account was untouched, nowhere to run. His phone hadn't pinged a tower since the day before. But then, a couple of days later, something almost unbelievable happened. A hiker about 30 miles north found a frozen sock in the mud along a game trail. In the same area, tucked under a thin layer of snow, was an old Polaroid picture. The picture was grimy and battered, nearly ruined by the cold. But the image was clear: it was a shot of Rick's cabin from the woods, taken from outside. In the reflection of a window in the photo, there was a face, but it wasn't Rick's. The face looked distorted, pale, with wide eyes, and the mouth slightly open, like it had been caught mid-whisper or mid-stare. An officer who saw it later described it as the most unsettling thing he'd ever encountered. He said the face didn't look quite human, like some strange, pale apparition caught in the reflection. The police looked for signs, but nothing turned up. No footprints, no sign of Rick. People in town started calling it the Watcher. Stories bubbled up about an entity in the woods, a dark figure that had been stealing people away for decades. Native legends spoke of the Dark Man, a creature that lurked behind trees, coming out at night. The FBI eventually stepped in, suggesting it was weather, accidents, or alcohol that caused all those disappearances. But everyone close to the case knew the truth: it wasn't that simple. Rick knew those woods, and he wouldn't have wandered out barefoot or left his house open. No way. It was something else, something unnatural, and he simply vanished without a trace. To this day, Rick Hills remains missing. Some folks think it was just a tragic accident, but others believe he saw something he shouldn't have, and whatever it was watching him.